And we're live, folks. Back again. This is JP, aka the Demon, and you're here with Lit Literature to discuss the epic finale of Era 1, Mistborn.
So good.
Yeah, very good.
It's amazing.
And we get a lot more books.
Yay.
Which is kind of cool.
More
but
books.
Today the focus on Mistborn. So let's go round circle. Hero of Ages.
Cherry, the hero of ages, yes.
Brett, the director.
Ben, Ruin.
The Lord of the and myself, which you already know. And we don't have Manny. Looks like he might show up. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what Even the Dream does. But
Pretty sure he read it. He just doesn't want to.
oh, he read it. Yeah,
he
he read it.
He just doesn't want to.
And the way that he was texting us back was kind of like,
I thought he
might
would
show up. Yeah. So let's just start initially with. So we did thoughts on books 1 and 2. Let's just do quick, kind of spoiler free, no thoughts. Or no, not no thoughts. Spoiler free thoughts on the book, and that way, if you're listening to this and you've gotten this far, it's time to go read the book before you continue. Because after we get through this spoiler-free few minutes of our thoughts, then we're going into a hell of a lot of spoilers. So, be forewarned. Okay, who wants to start?
I'll start. Definitely think that this was a near perfect, like, I loved how well this series ended. That it was a great book 3 to the trilogy. It's an amazing short series that you can kind of get through in a couple weeks. Not super long like some of the epics that we've read. This specific one has a lot of intrigue and kind of like a lot of internal character struggles and like kind of trying to figure out who you are. There probably was a little bit of a dull section in there, but I think 100% made up for at the end of the book, with how well the finale of the series to me feel that it played out. So many things answered way more than you would expect in my mind, and it really concluded strong, especially if you kind of know, like, all right, there's the Alamance or the Law of Alamancy, and there's like other like books after this. This, you do not need to read those, and it ends amazingly. I will say that.
Cool. All right, who's next?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. It was awesome. I liked everything about it. There's not much I can add to it above what Josh said, but yeah, I think it's interesting that it almost feels like it could be, except for maybe one little thing that happens, it could be just like completely self-contained little series. You know, like it almost feels like it doesn't have to fit into the Cosmere if it doesn't want to, but yeah. I'm glad it does, you know, because it fleshes it out more. But like if I just read these 3 books, I'd be satisfied.
Yep. Which that's kind of, I think, Brandon's intent a little bit, right? That if you read a Cosmere book, the Cosmere storyline is going on in the background, so you could still enjoy them book by book or series by series, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Although strangely, with this series, it seems though that
Even
each set of 3 seems like they're going to be their own stories, whereas like Stormlight, even though it probably has more words than all 3 of these books, at the end of the first book, you're like, when the hell is book 2 coming out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at the end of this book, I'd be happy to hear that there's more Mistborn books, but I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't wait till the next one, other than that it's a great book, and I want to read more great books. But it's like, it's just very nicely put together.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
This book started out really strong. The first chapters really put me in fast, and there was a lull in the middle. And then it ended. The last like 5 hours was just so intense, and everything happening at once. I could finish it up, and it was
Dude,
a great ending.
The culmination of that last few hours. I woke up, I think, at like 6 a.m. and then I was like, well, I've got like an hour. I'll put my audiobook back on. I had like the last 2 hours, I think, or something like that. And then I put it on and I did not go back to bed. It was impossible. You kind of can't stop the end because my mind would like every time I'd start to doze off, I'd be like, but. So
yeah, it is very similar.
Yeah.
I would say it's almost similar to the end of maybe not as long, but the end of the other series, The
Brent
Black
Weeks.
Prism. By Brent Weeks.
my God.
So that one had the final book, like pretty much from half the book was just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm at the end of the book.
Yeah.
But it just is like half a book of like a culmination. Whereas this one, it's probably not that long, but it's literally the last third of the book is just this like
it's intense.
culmination of like all this stuff, but it's not like it's just like, oh, here's the climax and it's done. It's just like, holy crap, here's this like amazing fight, and then here's something else amazing, and then here this is like now something else amazing is gonna happen. Oh my God, got insane.
Yeah. So
I'm just torn because I know the next series is set a couple hundred years in the future.
Yep.
And I just want to read more about all these characters.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
But there'll be like new characters and new
I
storylines.
promise you will not be disappointed.
And I know it's gonna be amazing. Like this attachment to the first series.
I know it's hard to kind of like lose these characters. It's gonna be sad, almost moving on to
Well,
another.
some of them we'll talk about it as we
Okay.
get there. Some of them, and here's your spoilers.
Yeah, so now getting into spoilers.
Some of them we don't even have a choice, do we?
Yeah.
Like we're not going to be reading about them anyway.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily need to say who yet, in case you're still here for some reason. But you have literally a few seconds to get the fuck out of here.
Like 3.
So if we like think about this book as a whole, number one was kind of like the job, you know. Number two was kind of like political warfare, right? And then number 3 is all out just war. I think it starts with
the world
Ellen.
ending.
Yeah,
it is just like
it's like
It's the world ending.
I just remember like the beginning of it is just Ellen shows up and is just like killing Kolos all over the place, and Vin is late, right? It's just Ellen for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finish on another mission.
But immediately you see we've had a time gap, like a time jump, a little bit of One Piece time jump going on
Yeah.
right there, right? So we get Ellen before, where he, at the end of the book, he's like, gets his Mistborn powers, but he's still Ellen.
Yeah.
Time skip, 1 year
Straight
later.
badass
Ellen's-
already.
Yeah. I mean, he does have Vin as a trainer.
yeah, this is true, and he's it's amazing
But there's no Rocky running up the stairs sequence where it's like,
Yeah.
it's just
He's-
boom,
he's
cut to badass.
They give a really cool a lot of times where they kind of juxtapose those two next to each other. Like Vin is amazing and like a natural and insanely powerful, but Ellen isn't that natural, but he is like first generation now. He is insanely
He's equivalent
powerful.
to the old first generation
Which-
guys who received the beads as gifts from the Lord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You think like Vin has been through, what is it, like 15 generations? It's been 1,000 years. So 15, 20 generations of this has kind of like been bred down. And now you've got Ellen, who is just getting like the pure top level. And his power is just like insane. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy because Kelsey always like, Ben is so strong.
Yeah.
And that's the entire first book. And then in this book, it's
Ellen is so strong. Like,
Well, even Vin is like that because it's crazy even too how they describe it. Like Vin is so strong she can control like several thousand Kolos without really like too much trouble or like thinking about it too much. Ellen could, without even really
30,000.
have like
Yeah, he had,
what
like-
did they brought in like
30,000.
he brought in
30,000.
well, then plus what he had, like it was like 40,000 or something.
Of course, later we find out that's a little bit more of a gambit than we had originally thought.
Yeah.
Due to the phenomenal amount of plans. Yeah, I mean, if you think about Ruin as one of the main villains, highly impressive. Highly impressive when you think back to book 1 and 2, that rooting for them was kind of like rooting for the bad guy. Like you learn that shit throughout this book. That's impressive. But also the level of power isn't we don't want to mitigate that just because Ruin had it in his plan to do that. It's not really like he allowed Ellen the power to take him over. It's just that Ellen's power is not gonna fare against a god. So
Yeah.
I get to see all of the Lord Ruler's planning. Like,
Yeah, they
everything
definitely-
he did for the people, even though he was a tyrant, he still tried his best.
It really kind of take a twist on that whole.
I loved it. I loved it because then you start to think about like, well, how much of the bad shit that he was doing was him, and how much of it was manipulation from Ruin? Because like that's the thing, you don't know how much are you being manipulated. Yet he managed to do so much despite manipulation.
Well, 1,000 years of manipulation too.
Yeah,
That
it's not just like a little bit.
constant. And one of the things that it's like, you see Zane, who we know went insane, and we kind of find out it's from Ruin.
Well, they say that just not that you're not wrong, but they do say that
The
Ruin
unstable.
found it much easier
pick on
to
unstable.
find and get people who are already veering towards instability. So
Yeah.
Ruin, Zane was already a bit unstable, and so was a little bit easier prey, similar to some of the other characters. Whereas if poor Penrose, is that his name?
Yeah,
Penrose?
Penrod.
Penrod, that's it. Poor Penrod just had no choice in the matter. I
But
guess.
still was actually
He fought
pretty
it,
awesome to
and-
kill himself, be able to be like, I know that this is wrong, there's something
Something's
wrong. And able to kind of finally finish himself off.
Yeah,
But that was
got
after he already
message
screwed up the whole
Yeah.
thing, though. But
Well-
at least he caught it, yeah.
It probably once it became obvious,
Yeah.
because you don't notice it at first. Just
It's
like,
like, oh, this is a good idea.
I mean, the funny thing, we didn't notice the entire series. That we were directly susceptible to Vin's.
We were.
And you don't, that's how, like, calm and how kind of meticulous and good he was able to do this.
Craziest thing that I thought, like the littlest detail at the end that Sazed put in there was like, or maybe it wasn't even Sazed. Maybe it was, it was one of Sazed's like writings where he's like, that Vin had almost completely stopped wearing the earring at all. Like it was Preservation's goal to get her to kind of like totally eradicate the earring.
Yeah.
And then because of what Kelsier said to her, she started to do that. But then the one thing that Ruin drove into Vin more than anything else was kind of a overreactive compulsion to have the earring. Despite the fact how many times she said, I didn't even like my mother. She killed my sister.
Yep.
And she tried to kill me.
Yeah.
Like no matter what. And then you see the manipulation that Ruin had gone years back, manipulating her mom to kill her sister with a piece of that earring so that she could use it to
pierce
enhance her
bronze.
bronze. Holy shit.
Which is why she can pierce the copper clouds, which
Exactly.
is awesome, because it was like, no one should be able to do that, but essentially she had two Allomancer powers. The
Double.
power of two Allomancers.
And she's
She had
already
her
strong,
own Mistborn,
and then double.
plus she's got her sisters.
What?
Sister's bronze, anyway.
Just
Yeah,
like
sister's
the
bronze.
manipulation level that Ruin was at was
On point.
he would win Game of Thrones.
I mean, it helps when
He's
you have
a god.
1,000 years to plan. Too.
Yeah,
like,
1,000
and
years. That's true.
You could think like,
He's playing this game against other gods, though.
well, the other god wasn't even sentient though.
Well,
barely.
well,
Kind of, but he set things in motion,
Yeah.
and he gave up his sentience
Yeah.
to put things in motion that would
Exactly.
counteract that.
Well,
that god's chess play, we didn't get to see it. He made it a while ago.
Yeah.
His chess play was humans
Amazing.
and the cage, the
Well,
prison,
the big
And
point
16.
here.
and 16.
16,
Yeah,
but I
16.
think my favorite thing is when they say that preservation, its entire nature, it cannot destroy. So preservation would never beat Ruin. There is no way for her to beat Ruin. So the idea is when you make those creations, she gave them a little bit
It is
more.
a he, though,
When
by the way.
when
A short man of stature with
a-
dark hair
and a big
hook
nose.
nose.
he gave extra of himself to the humans, just a small bit. But once a human then took preservation's power, they also had the portion of Ruin's power, which let them destroy.
Yep.
So without that, like, gambit,
That chess play.
that
Woo!
play was so good, and it's something that it was just like thousand, like this could be, we don't know how long or how many kind of maybe cycles through this that ruin was entrapped, but
Yeah, we don't
this
know
could have
when
been
it
done
created.
just tens of thousands of years ago, or maybe just like 2,000 years ago, but whatever, this was planned way in advance, and just with that sliver of hope that the human, when preservation's body, the mist, essentially decides to infuse with someone, they'll be able to make that right decision to preserve humankind, but still have the ability of ruin to destroy him.
And now, well, we're not going to talk about it yet, but when we get to the end, we could talk about like what the reality is with the two powers that we didn't have before. But for now, we can save that.
I would like to jump to one of I had the most mixed feelings, and I went back and forth so much with Spook.
Oh,
And
yeah. We could do
Spook's whole section, like, was the part that at the beginning, I'm like, I want to read this the least, and then it was like the part that I wanted to read the most, and then it was like, this is so frustrating, and then it was like, but this is amazing. It was like this huge roller coaster back and forth where you get, I loved like kind of how they put in little things about his real name, Lestiborn.
Yeah.
Which is
Estebornes.
Lestibornis, which is like the pretty much the lasting borns, which was like kind of left at birth kind of type thing, is what it really was meant to stand for. And
we know it's not even his real name.
Yeah,
he
it's
just
not even-
gave it
yeah.
to his uncle at that clubs.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, that's sad.
What a badass.
And then
Close
how
is.
much he, kind of just like not resented, but afterwards, like disliked that he wasn't there. He was like the watchman. He kind of was this like low level, not even picked by Kelsier, and how much he wanted to emulate Kelsier, and that whole story
Not so
arc.
much later did he understand the importance of information.
Yeah,
but
that whole story arc going to Urtru, Urteu, or something.
Yeah, Urteu or something. You know, strangely, even though I audiobook, not everything stays. It's just like, in this book, it was kind of like the one city and the other.
It was what? Fardex?
No.
Or no, Fardex was the... Where was Yeoman? That was...
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah.
It started with an F.
Yeah,
It definitely wasn't Fardex, because they didn't say that in the audiobook. I would know it if I heard it. But yeah, you know, interesting concept that they're like going from stash to stash, following the hints, and what genius the Lord Ruler had to not really put anything true information in there. Hints, but the reality is Ruin was kind of following them from spot to spot, trying to get information on where his body is,
Yeah.
where the ATM is. That's also fucking cool.
It's Urteu.
Urteu.
That's where Spook is. With the citizen Quillian.
Quillian. Okay. Good old Quillian.
So yeah, he his entire like scene there kind of goes from it's just like, Spook, you're being an idiot, because he starts burning his tin, and he's just like
I thought that was so
flaring.
amazing.
By the time we met
I
him,
loved it. I was like, yes, this is awesome.
by the time we got there, it was already, if he ever stopped flaring tin, he would pretty much
Yeah,
just
he
be...
did it for a year straight by the
yeah.
time
He was
got
like,
there.
it was for years that he had just been constantly, not just like burning it, but flaring it, like
You know
at
what's-
the highest level he could.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really cool is it had been longer than a year, because they even alluded to that in the end of the second book,
That he
when he's
was
with
constantly
Ellen,
had it on.
and he got pissed at the terrorist people when they had too many torches up, and he was like, "Why the hell do they need so many torches anyway?" He kind of like,
Yeah, he says he
off.
started burning once his uncle died.
yeah. So he might have already been leaning.
It was a
veering
penitence
towards,
almost, like
Yeah,
he
to
was
feel
like,
the pain of everything around him. all the
Yep.
time.
And it's one of those ones where even like in the kind of little sections that you have of Say's talking, where he kind of alludes that like some of them it's like really, really dangerous, like pewter burners. You can get the pewter drag and then you can kill yourself. But like Ten Eyes, when they do it, almost make themselves into something different. Like he's at just this heightened sense all like constantly, where it just like turning it off, he becomes just like numb, can't feel anything.
Like a computer drag, that's the danger. The problem with that is that's probably permanent. If you do it actually, to be honest though, if you can't, the reason it's so much harder to do with pewter is you burn pewter out so fast. Pewter is one of the fastest burning metals.
Well, that and they had a tendency to kill themselves.
Yeah, because you're not noticing
The damage.
Yeah,
But yeah, they had a name for it in the book series too. Like when someone like ascends and it's like does it all the time.
Yeah, what was that? They did have a name for it. Like a higher level human being suddenly, but you also have the same. The other thing that's really cool is you see how strong Mistborns are. Like how much stronger they are than anybody else. And in this world so far, you either have one power or all.
Yep.
Not in between. But yet we get certain examples now of how powerful it could be to have just even one set. Not just one.
That's the thing, is a set's two.
Yeah, a set is two. If you just had one set, you could balance all of the things that you're doing with tin with the pewter. And
Yeah.
that was amazing to see.
Because it's like, man, there's a reason that loud noises are bad for him. They hurt him almost, and then it's like to be able to like, well, I can just withstand more because I have the pewter on. It's like it's good, but I was the entire time like, I'm just like, dude, you're gonna kill yourself. This is like bad. Like I knew from the beginning that this was bad. Like it's like a drug. You're relying on like athletes. They can rely on freaking HGH, like hormone roids. Exactly. You can rely on that shit. It can do amazing shit for your body, but once you get that hook and you have to need it, like you just stop using it and it destroys your body. That's when it's like that problem. You could see that descent to that. It was just like
Spook, he kind of knows that and he chooses it anyway because he's like, I need to do more for our side.
I need to be useful. He was incredibly, that was a hard thing where you could really relate to him with how much he was like, I fled. He was the only one knowing to lead Elend and Vin, lead them out of the city, knowing the city was going to fall. And when the other two found out, they went back. Where it was like, he was just like, he was scared. He was running. He knew. Yeah. And it was, that probably just kind of wrecked him.
It makes sense. He's only a 10-eye, and he didn't have a lot of fighting ability at that time. And so, like, what's he going to do in that situation? Well, Vin and Elend, could Elend fight at that point?
Elend could not. Vin could.
Vin could, like Havoc.
Yeah.
Obviously. But, so she went back.
Yeah, it was, you get his feeling, but it was also a very frustrating, and it was like, in the beginning, I was like, man, I don't want to read about him, because I know this is going to, like, end badly. But then there's a bit of a turn when he starts to try and actually, like, use his powers. I think when he tries to save, first he's dumb, and he tries to talk to Belen something. The girl,
the sister,
the citizen's sister, and then once he gets the injury with the piece of metal inside of him, when he goes back,
that was nuts how he got that.
Oh, I know. I thought that was awesome because he's like, he could feel the wind from the blade coming.
Oh yeah,
where he could identify it and move and react to it, and it was like
so heightened.
Oh, that was awesome! Like being able to hear everything, but he just couldn't. He didn't have the ability to move with it.
Yeah. Well, he's fighting computer guys.
Yeah, he was fighting computer thugs.
Which he wasn't expecting.
Dude, the craziest thing is that Ruin at that point it wasn't necessarily planned. Because, like, that was a total accident that the one Peter thug got stabbed.
Into a point.
I don't know if it was an accident.
I don't think it was an accident either.
You don't think so?
Well, because we already know that
other pewter guy
was in Citizen at that point.
Citizen was manipulated. You think he was staking his pewter guys though? Because it was another pewter guy.
Yeah, I think he had Ruin had control or had his fingers in multiple of Citizen's people.
You think so?
I think it was just like that one where he's like, boom, take it now, exert as much control as I can. Because they were saying, like, there are, like, 200 spots, but it has to be, like, perfect.
Well, it has to be perfect to make them transform. but like you could it's less precise, the spots, just to transfer some power.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, because I think it is because Vin had the earring.
Yeah.
And his.
I think that's one of the spots. Like it was precise.
You think so? Boy, I don't know. Yeah. Like they even talked about Marsh when he chose the heart to stake the heart, and the only reason he was choosing the heart was because they can't let him pull it out, and he knew that Penrod was sane enough. He wasn't gonna like leave it in there and be open to manipulation. So like he put it in the specific spot so that they were nervous to pull the stake out. Now I think to transform them, like to elevate to either a Koloss or a Inquisitor or a Kandra. Well, Kandra is a little different. They were like a different. They work the opposite. You're not like turning a human into one. They already got turned into that, and then the Lord Ruler was giving them sentience back. But like you kind of get the feel that if you just stake metal anywhere in your body, and that's even Spook had that written, like even a little bit of metal in your body could make a difference. And
I think that meant like you could be contaminated by Voon,
yes,
and he could have access to you. I don't think it works with Hemolog. How do you say it?
Hemorrhagy.
Like the spike to give you power needs to be in a specific spot.
We'd have to look at that and really like digest it.
Yeah.
We won't really get anywhere hypothesizing. Could be though. It could really be.
But it definitely...
They do talk about like the preciseness needed for the other hemalurgic abilities, so it could be.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that was like, I felt from that point, you're kind of like, oh shit, like you start to realize kind of how he got the powers, but you're not entirely like, oh, this is a bad thing right away, especially when he goes and he saves the little girl. Like that whole scene from then, I was like, ooh, I really like reading this.
Well, Ruin is a patient guy.
Yes.
Yeah. So he starts like giving him positive thing. Trust the vision of Kelsier.
Yeah.
Trust me. You know, like I'm good. And then later it's like, kill him.
Yeah.
Kill him.
Yeah.
Kill him. Kill him.
When it was in the fire and Spook was dying, but Kelsey was talking to him, I was 100% sure that was Kelsey. I was like, oh my god. Because why would Moon save him? Is this some guy?
Yeah.
And then like the next chapter, when's he's like, he was telling him to kill people. Like, oh, that's not.
But if you think about knowing Kelsier, you would maybe
Nobles, he probably would be like, kill the noble. Like he was one who would.
I mean, early Kelsey, but at the end,
probably not.
I think at the end he
was
had
converting.
seen the error in his ways enough.
and realized that all of them had
he
to
might have
die.
been getting there for sure. If he hadn't seen it yet, at least there was one guy he was willing to make a, and that's the gateway, right?
Yeah.
So if he kept living, he'd probably have more gateways. But Spook's storyline, which I guess we'll be able to continue as we go a little bit longer. We had, if we divert back to the beginning of the story a little bit, just so that we don't miss gaps in episode 1 at least. We learn about strength, Koloss, possession of Koloss. We get to meet a strange Koloss named Human. I'm Human. His name was Human, and he played kind of an important role in the discovery of how Koloss are made, which freaks the shit out of me.
Vin and the thing that I wasn't sure of is that he ends up Vin commanding him, like using all of her strength to be like, go tell me how are Koloss made, and he grabs just like a skin, like a freaking literal, just like
one Koloss skin off.
Yeah, just like pulls it off of the dead Koloss, takes the skin and goes running to
and
takes the
spikes.
pins.
And runs to the freaking like medical tent, and just like grabs, like he looks at like 2 people, right?
I think it was no.
He looked at a couple. He was about to grab them and stopped them.
And so it was just like, so we find out that the Koloss are made just from people, injured,
and not dead, injured, like, or maybe not injured at all. And then you're thinking about all the villages they've been sacking, and I'm like,
yeah. No. That's the thing I want to know is it's like, how do they they have to get to a point though where they're not frenzied, but because like it seems when they're frenzied, they're just killing.
Yeah.
Right. They have to get to a point like how do they? Who stops them? Do they just stop themselves and be like, okay, we've killed like 80% of them. We're gonna save the rest of the 20%.
Well, they seem to have an impulse because human is like, we need more, we need more,
Yeah.
we need more. So they seem to have the rage impulse, but an impulse to have more. In the old days, the Lord Ruler would give them more.
Yeah. I wonder if they like part of their when they're in certain frenzies, if it just like lob off an arm, like or just do certain things, don't kill them, just like incapacitate as many, injure as many of you can, like gravely injure, and then you just gather as many of them up as they can and just start like making more. I wonder how that process is. You just like come across like 10 colossus just like stitching people together with fucking like pins and the skin body. There's like 3 people in there.
Colossus legitimately just kind of like, I don't want to be a Colossus.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a Colossus. I don't want to be part of you 4 and one other guy and make a Colossus. I don't want that at all. I just like, that freaks me out. Skin coming off and like,
the descriptions are so good.
I don't know. It sounds fun to me.
If I think about it, though, it's terrifying to also be an Inquisitor and have like too many spikes where you have next to zero control
Of yourself.
over yourself.
Yeah, it's just like the thing is that the Colossus themselves are just like one of those like crazy. I think it's such a cool, unique concept that it's just like they have all this like baggy skin, but as they grow up like bigger and bigger, they're like
It makes
skin
sense.
starts ripping and like the flaps are just like hanging off and just like blood trickling down from these open wounds where they're just stretching their
Suddenly
skin.
it makes sense when you find out they're reusing skins.
Jeez. I mean, those skins have to heal though, right? Because like the biggest ones, they talk about how like they're like it's slit at like the chin and it just like flaps are hanging off because it's like stretched so far that they're starting to rip.
Or it's like ripping around their mouth. And the older they get, the bigger they get. So
Yeah.
we don't know like if they were to actually live long enough.
Well, they die from heart failure once they get like 15 feet tall.
Yeah, they
Oh,
probably
do they?
as they get too
Yeah.
big, they just die.
Gotcha.
Or they become. It's just like as soon as they start to show that, they probably don't even get a chance to die of heart failure. As soon as one just like takes a knee, like my chest hurt, it's like lobbed head off.
Someone else's turn.
So that was interesting. I really like the development around General Bordeaux, the French guy in the audiobook.
Demo,
Demo, Demieux. General Demieux.
is that it? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he.
Trying to figure it out.
That was one of those things too that was super awesome when they're like 16% of the population, and it's like 16% of them also fell sick for the longest time.
Yeah.
And it's like 1/16. So you're like,
1/16
this is
of 1/16.
this is what I want to know is what percent died? Is it 2/16, 1/8 died? Because
It sounded like they weren't quite sure about the percentage that died because it had more to do with your own age and immune system.
Yeah.
And able to handle the stress of the mist.
Well, they make it seem though that like since the people who were sick the longest had the most powerful, the ATM mistlings, they were ATM mistlings. I wonder if the ones that all died were one of the 2 that we don't know about.
Well, and maybe they were like too old or too young
Or
to
to
withstand.
live
Or maybe
through-
had some other kind of like, let's say even if you're a younger guy but you're born with like kind of an, and especially at this time, an unknown like heart
Disease
issue or
or-
something.
yeah.
Existing condition.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they said like originally it didn't take so much for the breaking. What is that? What they called it? The breaking.
snapping?
When someone snapped to their powers. Originally, when it was more pure, it didn't take as much, so you could do a lot less for someone to actually get to the
as
point
it
where
got
they were that
diluted,
powerful.
it got more.
We
and
found
more.
out that they just like walked out into the mist and that's how they awoke.
Yeah, that's how Mistings would before there were any Mistborn. But but also the
Hence
ruin,
the name,
yeah.
which makes a lot of
Which
sense.
is awesome.
We're always like, why Mistborn and Misting? It's kind of, like, I wonder why. Well, oh yeah, that's how they used to do it.
Yeah, that's before the Ascension,
You know,
even.
before 2,000 years ago or something.
But also we find that Ruin had been manipulating, like, he was like, oh, you know what, like, this is a thing of preservation, but you know what, I can make it stronger. He manipulated it to make it even worse. Which was, all that whole information was just, like, awesome, and kind of the foresight and, like, the build-up in a lot of these things that we don't know about.
No good deed
throughout the
goes
series.
unpunished.
That one was really awesome. I think one of the really cool, like, kind of tidbits that they built up in this series.
Yeah, I agree. Like this whole idea of like even gods just having to deal with the fact of there being counterbalancing forces in the world, I think is really, really interesting, and how without ruin, you know, preservation, like, I don't know, it's just how they balance each other out.
The coolest thing too that we get in this is that, like, it's not really about good or evil. It's just about the nature of the force that you're dealing with. And like the force of preservation is really that. It seems good because for the most part we want to preserve our health or our this or our that. But the reality is that preservation alone over time would also be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Nothing would ever change, ever progress, ever move. So like you realize that the impulse allows preservation to seem
Good. Like the better one.
but it's really not. It's not quite that way. Although
well, like in nature, you know, like a forest fire seems like a bad thing, but it's necessary for forest to stay alive. Eventually, it needs to be burned through. You know,
it does. And actually, if we talk about forest fires in the West, obviously there's a shit ton.
Yeah.
And there is some debate. Now, of course, you can maybe attribute some to, global warming or other kinds of environmental impacts. But there is also some thought that this might actually be a standard cycle of forest fires that we don't get every few thousand years.
Well, I heard that they stopped doing burnings because they didn't want forest fires, and so they had all this debris.
So then suddenly the
super
build
forest
up,
fire.
right.
which could be that as well. But either way, not to take.
That's why they try and do controlled burnings, because they know it's part of nature. So it's like, well, can we control this part of nature
try
to where it doesn't destroy our house,
good-
Right.
but we still get the benefits?
Yeah,
But anyway, that's
a
a
good part
But-
of it when it's wet, and not dry,
Exactly.
and drought.
So I mean, it's a question mark about it, but there's no doubt in nature it's a necessary.
It's a necessary
thing at some
thing,
point.
yeah.
We just don't know in our limited view. Is it something that we fucked up, or is it like a bigger picture? We're not, unfortunately, going to know that until we're like gone. Like they'll in the future, hopefully, we'll know more about that. But you know, we're young in terms of our understanding and documenting of this shit, in terms of our current technology.
Yeah.
But you think that's kind of how these people are. They're thinking on these big levels, but these gods, they're not. They
Yeah.
see the big picture, and they have been seeing the big picture for a long time. So you could understand how easy it would be to be manipulated.
It also always makes me, in this Cosmere universe, maybe this was touched on in Stormlight and I just don't remember. Maybe you guys can answer this, but it also just makes me think of, are the gods really gods, or are they just perceived as gods by these lesser beings? And is there another like level above the gods, like something that they're dealing with and that they have to be beholden to, and something, you know?
I think that ties to whatever Sanderson's Cosmere story is.
Yeah.
It's happening behind the scenes.
Something's be happening behind the scenes.
It feels really like he's setting up this one, especially, and it's surprising to me that this came before like the Stormlight Archive and some of his other works, because it's very it seems to set like a almost like, oh my gosh, like to me it's surprising because it feels like he's playing out a really big surprising thing about his Cosmere, because you're really starting to get, and you see it a little bit more when you look at the other series, and if you read it after this, that the gods, not only are they these forces and these things, but you're also getting this impression that they're controlled, and they're almost like their wills are very human-like.
Well,
Like,
I think it is. This is they kind of point at it in this book, and then if you go and view that now in Stormlight, you're thinking, oh, these guys are people that took the mantle
powers
of the power.
exactly, and they have grudges. They have especially towards the end of this book, as you start to see like Ruin gloating, and it's like, why like if you're just like this like force, if you were to describe them as just a force of destruction, the gloating, there would be no gloating. There would be no need for it. But the gloating is almost this like human aspect where it's just like, and the fear too in some parts where you start to see it. That's like the human part of it where it's just like, but that doesn't feel like it's this deity or this godly power, but like they have it. And it almost even hits harder home when preservation does die. Like the god dies, but they're like, oh, the god died, but his power, his force is still here. And now it needs something to latch onto almost, like, because it can't just dissipate. So you get this feeling where it's just like, there's more to it than just like gods even. There's we get to see here how one person got it, but you don't even know that this, like they say at the end, like this used to be one power, why'd they split? How did it become two people's power? And like, so there's something else going on there that it feels like when I read this, especially towards the end, I was like, man, this is a lot. Reading it with the context of other books in the Cosmere, I'm like, this is telling us a lot in this book. A lot more, I think, that we've gotten up.
I have to say, on that note, a little bit, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but not to get too much into Stormlight, because I don't know how many of you have already read it, but I actually was thinking during this how much I actually really enjoyed the slow burn introduction into the gods being actually kind of human-like. Whereas like we started off in the beginning, oh, they're gods, and I loved like this kind of slower revelation into it. I'm actually really glad that we read Stormlight first. Because I find this to be a little bit, I mean, we're already introduced to it, so it's not a big deal, but like I found it to be a little bit less interesting to just be like, there's Ruin and he's a dude. It's like right away, you know, whereas like in the Stormlight, I remember specifically that being one thing that stuck out to me, this slow reveal to the humanality of these gods, you know, and I thought that was a really cool thing to like slowly roll into.
I actually, thinking back to that, I agree with you. Because I also read Stormlight first. and then I went back and did Mistborn. And I kind of, now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Because the slow roll in Stormlight kind of, it's like, whoa. And then you get to go back in Mistborn, if you're like us weirdos who probably read it backwards. We're like, oh. So we don't know where these guys came from. They are definitely, but then we also don't know, like, are they the original or not? Is there a difference? It's like Sazed even said he could see, or no, it was Vin. She could see the history of her power, of the mantle, but not that's it. And so it's like she understood that piece of it. The other thing is like, so when she first gets it, she's kind of like fresh. So she's probably still her. But like, if you had it for 20,000 years, I bet you become more and more and more just the force. Like it's like it kind of shifts you know, because like no matter what, you're being influenced by the force itself, which is kind of interesting, because I don't know that you would you'd always maintain some human element, as we see at least Ruin and Perseverance maintain some of their human elements, but we don't know like if they're anything like what they were when they took up those mantles.
Right.
So, how we doing on time, guys?
We're like 30 minutes into it.
Oh, nice.
35.
We are going fast.
40.
So, we kind of talked about some of the side. Is there any other side characters like we should just hit on real quick? I think a lot of them took like Ham took a very basic kind of side role. Breeze had more. But kind of a side role.
Breeze got back into the swing of things quicker than I was expecting after the last book.
I agree too.
Especially after the Battle of Luthadel, I thought he was going to be broken. And just like...
We all kind of did, right?
I thought they were going to have a huge portion of him having to get back to himself, but he seemed to be kind of right back into it, which
Sasa
is
even
good.
said that
It's easy because he
had his gal.
She
Makes it easier.
So I mean, I feel bad for Sazed in that sense, but then, because that's why he almost like he didn't say it venomously, but
Yeah.
it's like close. It's kind of like I kind of want to be a dick and say this, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
But Ham was kind of surprising to me in the sense that Vin even came out and said Kelsier had everybody right, but didn't have Ham right.
He couldn't be a general because he got too close
He's too
with the
close.
people.
Yeah.
He became too personable with his generals, and that would lead him to not make the right decision.
Good commander, good soldier, but couldn't do the bigger picture general.
Yeah.
Which was, I wonder if that's true or not, or if there was something else going on. I'm not sure. That's really interesting to think about.
I think it's true because he spends a lot of time with the soldiers, and even in like the first books, like he would go to the barracks, which was essentially like the enemies, and he would be training with the
City guard.
the city guard, which were like essentially ska traitors that a lot of people kind of viewed him as.
Kelsier,
But he was like friends with them, kind of, and
was,
I think like even I don't know if it ever came up in the book, but it probably would make it harder for him to turn and say like we got to attack these people.
well, in book one, he did though, and then Kelsier even said like we have to go attack, and you're gonna have to fight him, and he.
Ham said, if I'm
you're right.
I'm not gonna.
You're right.
Turn
He did.
Theta and attack
Yeah.
them. I'm gonna fight with them.
Yeah, you're right. I remember that now. So he did say that. So yeah, maybe Kelsier did make a huge mistake there. Not that he's a mistake on his team, just he might be the mistake as a general, which clubs seem to do a good job of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who is a much harder guy,
but
kind of got that. Yeah, he ended up dying.
Yeah, but I think we talked about everyone but Sazed.
Sazed, yeah, we could end on some Sazed because we're gonna want to spend a lot of time on the end. So
yeah, and we got to talk about Yeoman and probably
yeah, Sazed. How far do we want to go down this road? I gotta tell you, for the first 3/4 of the book, it was really depressing to read his parts.
points of view. Yeah,
His
he
obsession with going through the religions.
It's frustrating for me, not because he lost his faith, that's because he misunderstood what faith is. It's not logic or truth. Like, it can't be spelled out for you. Faith is taking it on faith and believing in something with your heart, even if you can't.
and it's even something he
physically
said
see
to
it.
other people.
Yeah.
He's said it to other people.
But he's trying to like figure out logically, and
Yeah,
it's gonna be.
he was frustrating.
He does say like, "Oh, I'm a hypocrite." But the truth is, though, that he also admits the biggest truth ever is it's so much easier to give other people advice when it's like relating to what you could see clearly on the outside. But yet, when you're dealing with all of the fuckery inside, it's much different, right? And so, like Sazed was like, I even said that, and
Yeah.
At one point I would,
and this and that,
Which is
like,
strange because one of the strengths, supposedly, I feel like when things are going according to plan, faith becomes less essential because you have the time to like kind of think things out and stuff like that. It's like when shit hits the fan that faith seems to like, well, I hope this thing I put faith in works because we don't really have time to think about this. You know, it's like it's supposed to get you through those hard times,
Kind of like Kelsey's
not be the
fucking
diversion.
plan.
It's like, oh, so.
But when
Although I guess it's
doesn't
what-
work out,
Yeah.
and, like I had faith in it.
That's true. I guess it depends what you have faith in.
Yeah.
What you're using that faith for. If you're using it for guidance and it brings you the wrong way, but a person with real faith would have been like, this is all part of it.
I mean, that's
I'm
what
not saying that's the right choice. I'm just saying that's what a lot of people do.
That's what he even said in like the first and second book, that you need faith even when it's bad. It's easy in the good times.
Exactly.
It's hard in the bad times.
Which that's exactly what he was talking about when he was calling himself
a hypocrite.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, he had a good amount of self-awareness, but I feel like it's like he was just in this rut. But it just felt frustrating because especially when you're like, man, this is like a year, maybe a year and a half after Tyndall died, and he's just like still kind of going on about this, and it even got to be like frustrating where he's just like, oh, I should help, but I just don't have like he couldn't even like muster the strength to try and like assist for his friends, which was getting really frustrating. Like he's just like, normally I would try and talk him out of this or like help him, but it's like I can't even help myself.
You
So.
know, back in this day, they definitely didn't have any medication for people truly suffering from
Depression.
legitimate depression at that
Yeah.
point. Not that, you know, you would want to rely on medication, but he was clearly unbalanced because you're right. It's that what tells me that he was just in a rut.
Yeah.
Also,
tough
for the longest time, I thought there was like a sliver of a ring inside him.
Oh,
then
maybe
just
he's being manipulated.
And like one was telling him like it's fake, just give up, you know, like
Dude, here's how much I forgot about the book. He's like, oh, I got those surgically removed, and somebody said like, oh, keep them inside. That'd be super useful, like the Lord Ruler.
Vin was the one who said keep it in you.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I took him out and removed him. And my mind was like, motherfucker, that would be awesome to have them inside of you.
Yeah.
Then we could jail you. You'd be using them all the time. Of course. Whoops, I'd be fucked because Rune would be manipulating my asshole.
Be like, idiot.
That's one of the things that's
Why
like,
is Jeff over there dancing around a pole?
it's one of the things
Rune
that was
told me
annoying
to.
was they had the Lord Ruler had the his Meadows pierced in his arm, but he should have known that
did.
So then why did he keep it pierced in his
Well,
arm?
I think two things. Back then, he knew that he was helping keep Rune trapped. Number one, so the level of influence that could be exerted, whatever, on him was probably limited. But number two, I think maybe it started out as an accident, and he was maybe gradually being manipulated slightly, because he even questioned in his own writings, like, I don't even know how much of what I've done has been like,
me versus manipulation
versus being slightly over time nudged here and there. And so who knows, maybe he was nudged here and there, but also,
I was gonna say it also makes sense why he didn't trust Inquisitors.
right. Yeah. That's why they weren't ahead of the church.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But so he clearly knew enough, but I don't know that he knew how much it would impact him, or maybe some of that was paranoia that Rune was instilling, that he needs to protect his rule so harshly. Like, we don't really know. Certainly, he might have just been a flawed person. To some extent, even if he was mostly good.
I want to say I thought it said he knew it was Rune's voice telling him stuff.
Yeah.
And like, he just ignored it, but he wasn't sure how much influence it still had over him.
Yeah.
Over 1,000 years.
It's kind of like even Zane would ignore the voice that was very
be like,
loud
kill him,
in
kill
his
him, kill him,
mind.
and he'd be like, eh.
Because he was more, but he had the strength to resist it, even with Vin. And then, Vin and Rin's voice that she heard all the time.
Yeah.
She did well beating that. So, like, you could beat it if your influence levels are lower. But,
But someone like Marsh, he had no choice.
yeah, that sucks.
11 spikes in him?
I know. He had upwards of 20 by the end.
Yeah, he had 11
yeah.
more spikes or
11
something like
more
that.
from
Yeah.
Like the other ones had 11, and then he had like 20 something.
Yeah. But the crazy...
We'll get into it in the next episode because I think it'll be like a little bit. I was
Marsh
I was
has to
so
be a long
confused by Marsh.
We gotta talk. We have to have some deep conversations
About Marsh, yeah.
because I feel so deeply bad for that.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm just so glad that Sazed left that book explaining everything.
I know.
His name will be
so
clear.
nice.
Yeah.
It's just otherwise he's just the worst enemy ever, and
Yeah.
that's so sad.
He's like the Snape of this book.
He is.
Oh, spoiler alert!
No, we already read this book.
No, I meant for Harry Potter.
Oh shit, you're right.
Oh, but I like Marsh.
By now, that's your own fucking fault.
Yeah, if you haven't read it by now, you deserve
Or watch
it.
the movies or pretty much anything.
Dumbledore dies.
And it's worse.
You need to beep that out.
Actually, we should.
Actually, you know what? That's a good idea. I think I'm gonna do that. Random flag, we could use a bleep right there. Thank you, Randall Flash. Flab. Randall Flab.
Flabby. You need to look out for it.
He looked a little flabby in some of those old movies. Anyway, I guess we should say,
Next
Mark, I do
episode.
want to say one thing that I really liked and something I want to highlight here too. The other thing we don't know is like how bad the Lord Ruler really was, because even on the stuff like the journals and things that the Lord Ruler was reading, that Vin was reading, and like how angry he was, Rashik was, could have been falsified. So, like,
Well, not in the metal slabs.
but the metal didn't actually call him that. He just said he was a bit angry and he didn't like people. But like, that's really all you got. Whereas if all of the other detail about Rashik's
the
past you got from the
the
books,
actual book.
and so we don't even know. Like, he might have just been like a bit angsty, but really actually a pretty decent guy who was charged with something he had a higher understanding level of. Not that I'm saying he was. It's just a context to think about a little
Well,
bit.
it just
Change
seemed
it.
like he could have been like a great guy, except he just hated his the people who put above him.
Well,
Like the
how we made
other
like
humans.
the ska and stuff. Well, what I want to know is like, did he do that right away, or was that over time through Ruin's manipulation? You know, because Ruin's goal was he needed to set stuff up so that somebody would want to overthrow this son of a bitch anyway. So like he couldn't have a perfect rule. Mm-hmm. Yet he was enough preservation that he wanted stability and stuff like that. So like, I just wonder how much of some of the bad things he did. We don't get the answer.
I also wonder. I forget exactly how all of it fits together because it's like 3 books ago now. But I also wonder if it's a possibility that it was like a quick reactionary fix on some of those decisions that he made. You know how like
he was
how
known for,
Vin was like would do something and be like, oh, now the planet's burning. Let's shift it. You know, I wonder if he was like doing something and then it's like, oh my gosh, there's something out of whack and I need these people to balance that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So.
It's interesting for
It
sure.
is.
And then also over time, he just was not only being influenced by Ruin more and more, but this is the problem with like immortality in general.
You start to care less.
His just scope on life and people in general was like not real.
Yeah.
I mean, he was seeing things like a very different person.
Exactly.
Visual
Like
story.
after 1,000 years, it's like like hundreds of millions of people he's outlived.
They're
And it's
just
just
people
like
just,
at this point, it's just like, what's the next? Like I gotta wait like 100 more years to the well, and then it's like, what do these people matter now? It's all gonna get fixed at the next one.
It's like how humans will say, like, you know, like, oh, fruit flies, they only live 24 hours. Like, so who cares,
to them,
you know?
yeah, I know.
But it's a lifetime to them.
Yeah, it's like to them, they might be like, I'm getting old now, and
Yeah.
I enjoy watching my 8 million children come from your fruit in the sink.
I mean, like, think about, like, how much quicker life feels. Like, a year goes by in what used to feel like a week.
I know.
You know what I
Actually,
mean?
even as we get older, that's a scary thing.
It's
right?
very scary.
So, like, you know, when we were young, a year was like, holy shit, a whole year.
Yeah.
Remember? A whole
yeah.
year of school?
Yeah.
Holy cow. This is huge.
We'll go to the movies next week. I'd be like, that's like a lifetime away.
Now it's like, holy shit, where did 2 months
Yeah.
go? Like,
Somebody says like, "Hey, plan for something in 3 months," and I'm like, "Oh,
there's no
damn,
time."
do I even have time?" What's out there? Like, let me look at that. Hang on. So
Time just goes by quicker the
Yeah.
longer you live.
it's a perception, and
I
so
think it's the perception. It's also we remember so much. So when you're a kid, you remember every minute that passed. Like you remember 10 minutes ago. Like I'm at a point in my life where I can't remember what happened 15 minutes ago. Where am I? Why am I in the living room? What am I doing? Where did my clothes go?
I was coming here for a reason.
Like a kid, if you're waiting in like a waiting room, you remember every minute of that entire experience. Whereas like now it's like I walk in like a waiting room and they call me and I'm like, already? I haven't even gotten through my YouTube video or something.
It's important though for in real life for adults and in the book world for the Lord Ruler to keep in mind though that the perception for them is very, very different
from others.
You know?
But it can make something that to us seems like completely abhorrent to him. It's just like for the long run, like this one rebellion does not matter.
Yeah.
Like what matters is I need to be here for when the well comes. They can hate me all they want, but I have to be here when the well is refilled.
I understand like how he got to that point because it's a very human thing to do, even though he wants people to think he's not human. But like it's like also, you know, to use the analogy again, like an adult, if like I do that to Jeff, like it's not gonna hurt. But if I do that to like a little kid, it's gonna hurt a lot. And I think it's important to know, to keep that in mind, that none of this really makes sense if you're not thinking about people's you know, perception and how you have to at least keep that in account. You know, it can't be the only thing that you base your decisions off of, but you always have to keep that in mind that like, this whole generation may be a blink of an eye to you, but that doesn't mean that they're expendable.
The best
for future,
leaders,
you know, it's
they can't lose the empathy, no matter what level. They have to have some level of it. You may have less, but you have to have some level of it.
Exactly.
And I was almost wondering if back in book 1 that was the purpose of that room. It's almost like he had that like room which was like rustic and old.
It reminded his own home.
And it was almost like he would go to a spot, make himself old, store some life and or health or whatever it was. Or it was just actually age. And just kind of like maybe try to zen or try to reach that kind of like mindset again. But he clearly needed to do more, you know, empathy, internal.
Maybe he should go visit his friends.
His what?
His friends.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I know. I get a feeling he didn't do that at all.
Yeah, that was crazy. Anyway, we'll talk about that next episode.
So
We'll talk about it next week.
Well,
Which, if you're 9, will be next year.
if you are 9, you shouldn't probably be listening to this. But,
probably not.
But it's okay if you are. It's not like we're terrible or anything. But
Just
Watch my mouth.
you know, we do our best. But I've already cursed twice this episode, so only for emphasis, though.
Then it's okay.
That's what I learned. Okay. So next episode, though, we do definitely got to hit. We didn't talk anything about the Condra. Obviously, we should start with Marsh. We didn't talk about a whole city.
Vin and Ellen.
And Vin
Yeoman.
and Ellen, we got a yeoman. That's his name or whatever it is.
His namer.
His namer.
In bingo, you watch his name.
All right. Well, with that, that was the kickoff to the final Arrow 1. Cheers. Fun trilogy.